Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje is back with us here today. Welcome, Greg.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you here on this Tuesday with plenty of action-packed weather going on over the next couple of days in the short term. And of course, we'll touch base next week on Tuesday. We'll show you the update on what's going on for the summertime season with this properly termed moderate and strengthening El Nino, not gargantuan or Godzilla-like, but we'll get the straight and narrow and skinny for you here next Tuesday on the long-range thinking for the rest of summertime and autumn across the country.
And until we get to next Tuesday's forecast, we have a short-term forecast here that Greg's going to share for us. So go ahead, Greg.
All right, and here we go off to the races here on this Tuesday, and a very delightful from an outdoor work standpoint scenario across a good part of the Corn Belt. Maybe not necessarily great if you're calculating and calculating those growing degree day units, but I'm sure that are lagging in some areas of the Midwest, but the stands outside of areas that have been drowned out or blown out because of severe weather or flooding rainfall. And there's more of that in the short term coming, unfortunately. A pretty good go of it with some pretty good numbers with the crop quality in the corn and soybean side, and still about the 94th, 95th percentile of wrapping up planting in some areas. And there's some folks already circling back into parts of Illinois and Indiana with regard to thinking about what we're going to do on round two, as in heading to get back out there. Evidently, there's some type of root structure issue as well that's going on in some cornfields that is not developing the way it should be, and hence having to go back out there and plant it all over again. Not sure the whole metrics on that, the dynamics, but some issues with regard to that. Anyway, a system, a weak one, and there's no shortage of these systems, about 3 or 4 of them to come our way through the Corn Belt in the coming days, but one weak one across the Midwest right now. Topsoil moisture, boy, we've run the pendulum from 45 to almost 50% on some of the current numbers. Surplus them through Missouri and Illinois, pretty good and representative of the eastern Corn Belt areas, including Indiana and Ohio, that are generally in the 20, 25, 30% range of surplus in topsoil moisture reserve. So we are in very good shape, and I'm sure if the tile lines are running correctly, we're getting that moisture down in the subsoil moisture base as well. And it's for this reason, this was late last week's drought monitor that still had a moderate drought despite the recent rains. That is another indicator that a lot of these rains have been convective, downpour producing, runoff generating. They don't get an opportunity to percolate and soak into the soil. So I'm sure later this week's drought monitor will have an improvement. But still some work to do across a good part of Wisconsin and northern Illinois. Back across the Plain States area, still some 90-degree air trying to make its way temporarily. So as far north as South Dakota, there is a change coming in the days to come there with respect to cool weather. Winter wheat harvest is rapidly progressing. There's not much to harvest, and it's been dry as a bone over about the western half of the plains, so about 3/4 of it complete across Texas and virtually through Oklahoma as well. So while the winter wheat schedule is winding on down, we still have issues with regard to topsoil moisture levels, and of course the quality over the rest of the winter wheat producing areas is pretty abysmal, poor and very poor, leading the pack some 86% in that range, poor and very poor with regard to winter wheat in through Nebraska. Otherwise, there's wet weather and some headlines being made from the tropics, we think, in the next probably 12 to 18 hours over the western Gulf Coast areas and down through the Big Bend of Texas, but rain from the coastal areas of Texas through Georgia, some of the heaviest rain across the western half of the Gulf. It is the tropical time of the year. We'll show you what's going on there momentarily. So some flooding down across some of that area. There has been some of those central Gulf Coast areas that back in May that had upwards of about a foot of rain for the month of May. So we're kind of making inroads to some of those worst drought areas. There's still surplus moisture farther north into parts of Louisiana and Alabama at about 28 to 26% respectively. And of course, we still have some work to do with the dryness and drought-related issues across the southern mid-Atlantic region, part of the Cotton Belt country of Georgia and North Carolina. By the way, there is potentially our first named tropical system. That little X marks the spot, not far outside of Brownsville, Matamoros area, the lower Rio Grande. It's probably going to drift east-northeast into the westernmost part of the Gulf of Mexico. Those are the shallowest waters, the warmest of waters as it relates to coastal areas. So we might have our first named tropical season, tropical storm of the Atlantic Basin season, getting going there probably in the next maybe 12 hours to 18 hours hours, and it will be short-lived about that, not even a day, as it makes its way and accentuates the rainfall into the Delta. Then later in that I-10 and I-20 corridor across Cotton Belt country, and it's for this reason that we need some additional rainfall in the Carolinas, down through Georgia and Florida. But remember, just a few weeks ago, it was a dead end of moisture and lack of moisture, I should say, extreme to exceptional drought. That deepest color and highest category through Georgia, parts of the Carolinas, and Florida Panhandle. So there's been some improvement to at least pasture lands, maybe the double crop areas, forages, etc. Some of the forages, by the way, evidently we're hearing through some Corn Belt areas that are too wet now, and some of the hay producing areas of Missouri too wet, and so some quality. You got a lot of hay, but the quality is pretty much rotten because of too much rainfall in the far southwestern reaches of the Corn Belt, particularly down through Missouri, where you can see we have really the lack of anything in the dryness and drought mode over the rest of the Delta and the southeastern states, to put things in perspective. The western states, pretty quiet, elevated fire risk out there, heavy irrigation demands into the Pacific Northwest, 110 in the lower elevations of the desert Southwest, 100-degree heat across the Great Basin, and probably some mid-90s as far north as the Willamette Valley and Rogue River Basin. In any event, back to the Midwest at hand, and that's the visible satellite picture. You can see a well-defined but fairly weak weather system in the upper Midwest. There's some shower and thunderstorm activity, paling in comparison to what's going to come down the pike in the next 24 to 36 hours. Recall last week, deluges and widespread severe weather events. I think there were 100 tornadoes across the plains, the Midwest, the Great Lakes areas. Those numbers are off the charts, at least as it relates to the seasonal aspect of severe weather. But some garden variety rainfall extending from the Ozarks up and across the Great Lakes region underway at the current time. And there's the surface weather map and chart with a very weak frontal boundary, no significant cooling behind that one. There is additional cooling on a series of fronts to come into the northern plains and upper Midwest. That's scheduled over the upcoming weekend. So there's frontal system number one. There might be, in the updated, we'll take a look at that in a second, slight risk of severe storms into parts of northwest Illinois and northern Indiana this afternoon. Otherwise, just garden variety stuff making its way on east as we move on through this afternoon. Now, by tomorrow morning, you can see a little red splotch through northern Illinois. Actually, overnight tonight, probably in the pre-dawn hours of tomorrow, there will be a rapid buildup, what we call these nocturnal thunderstorms, a low-level jet heat humidity just bang into a frontal boundary over the parts of Iowa and Missouri, and we'll get these towering thunderstorms to break out within a few hours' time from the Twin Cities down to Des Moines to about the Missouri line, and they'll race east, and there might be some severe weather first thing tomorrow morning in the parts of northern Illinois, as in weather watches and warnings. The faster and quicker you get that stuff to blow through in the morning, the better opportunity for the atmosphere to recharge, refuel, reload up. And we'll take a look at the severe weather potential going forward tomorrow afternoon and evening time. And this will be fast-moving stuff. And once again, fast-moving storms equate to high wind up aloft, equate to the bringing high wind down to the ground or close to the ground level, and plus the rain, cooled air in the downshafts of rain. And we're repeating what we had here last week. There may be another widespread severe weather outbreak, and stands are getting tall enough. Some folks did get some green snap out of some of those storms last week. I wouldn't be surprised if you have to deal with that. And again, the specter of rainfall, there's going to be too much of that and too little of heat for now. And we'll discuss that in the longer range stuff in our get together next Tuesday. But showers, thunderstorms blow on through, a little more pronounced cooling behind that weather system, and another cold front up to the north and northwest of us. But at least there's welcome rain south of the Ohio. We need more rain through Tennessee, the mid-south, and sections of the mid-Atlantic region. So this afternoon, a couple of severe weather areas noted in through Iowa and northern Illinois. Tomorrow, this is tomorrow's severe weather risk. You can see that red area. That is a moderate risk, level 4 out of 5. That will include places like maybe Paxton, Illinois, and maybe Watseka, Milford, and Iroquois County, into Maryville, and up to maybe Lake County, Illinois, back west to maybe Peoria, south to Galesburg, and back cutting across areas just slightly north and northwest of Champaign, Danville, and another area that is at least an extreme, or at least an enhanced area, I should say, enhanced area of severe weather in that orange area through much of Missouri, the rest of Illinois, Indiana, northwest Ohio. So we've got a severe weather outbreak on our hands, at least 2 in some areas of the Midwest, or at least definitely 1. Some areas may get into it twice in a late night, early morning event. And sometimes those late night, early morning events, those storm tops kind of mushroom out. That's how you come up with these big rainfall totals all of a sudden. The cloud column just collapses and you're out to the races with an inch and a half of rain in an hour's time. We could repeat that again in the afternoon. So the model numbers are generally on average. You sometimes take 2 and 3. There's a formula to take those numbers, and you can kind of calculate what an individual thunderstorm would be capable of under the right circumstances. So got to keep an eye on that throughout the Midwest. And like I said, I think it's going to be too much of a good thing before the pendulum. And if you stay even keeled on the moisture department, and you're okay on growing degree day, and you can beat an early frost, which I think is another trademark of a moderate to strong El Nino before you go into a very mild autumn and winter season, you'll be in great shape. But again, that's a lot of boxes to check off here as we get deeper into the summertime and early autumn. Fire risk across much of the West is noted there. The next 48 hours, that's a pretty good targeting of about an inch and a half of rain for openers in northern Illinois, northern Indiana, southern Michigan. So again, we continue to, if you can percolate and absorb some of that rain, wind down the dryness and drought-related issues. High temperatures for the day-to-day, you can largely see the heat is across the Black Hills, Big Sky country on westward. Pretty comfortable 70s and low 80s. You like to see, low to mid 80s this time of the year, and nights upper 50s to low 60s if you're trying to get the maximum per day accumulation of growing degree units. And if you're basing that on the corn scale, I think that starts at 65, I think. In any event, there's readings for Thursday back into this cooler air mass. There'll be a short spike on temperatures tomorrow, maybe pushing close to 90 to parts of eastern Iowa and northern Illinois, banging up against that 75-degree air. And so hence that's another front and another reasoning behind the showers and thunderstorms. Some degree of heat here as we get on through Saturday over the plains, but everyone else basically east of the Missouri is cool for the time of year and getting cooler into next week. Comfortable, great sleeping weather, easing on the air conditioning bill. No big stress on livestock as well. But corn and soybean fields are going to take a hit for a different reason. Either too much rain, not enough heat. For the next 5 to 7 days in the upper air charts, and just a parade of these weather systems. You don't see much of a well-defined feature down across the Gulf Coast as you'd expect in this particular setup. It's just the big warm H's, the highs that are typically in the plains and central and southern plains and southern Corn Belt, the big 588 things. As the commodity guys take a look at and know how to register weather with that. Those are across the deep south and southeast part of the country where the heat will play out. But one weather system exiting Friday to Saturday. There's another diffuse system or two in this broad based west to east zonal, but flattened and low latitude jet stream pattern. Low as in it's kind of lower and farther south than it should be. And again, jet stream winds, upper level winds, these kind of maps and charts also denote temperatures up aloft. And you can reflect that down at the surface. And at the surface, you can see a pretty couple of decent weather systems, and there will be a general high wind component with this feature coming through the Midwest and the Plain States tonight and tomorrow. So apart from thunderstorms, 30 to maybe 40 mile an hour south-southwesterly winds if you're in the heat. That'll bake the ground over in a hurry, no matter how much rain you've seen of late. In any event, you get one system to blow through. The same frontal boundary works back to the north as a warm front. Get more thunderstorms along it. That's the Saturday to Sunday thing. That front pushes on southward, stalls on out in the deep south. Lower Ohio Valley works back north as a warm front as the next system comes on through. So you want to warm it up, you'll make rain. You want to cool it off, you make rain. Too much rain in the forecast. Here are the headlines going forward over the next few days. And generally speaking, and this could be a little situated a little farther to the north, but another significant 2 or 3 outbreaks of significant wet weather after the stuff of tomorrow will be focused over the eastern and southern eastern plains, southern Corn Belt, down through the Ohio Valley, down through the parts of the Gulf Coast area, lower Mississippi Valley, and points out of the east. And ultimately, at least prior to that, there will be significant heat over the eastern part of the country. So heavy rainfall threat will be focused in the south before it shifts to the north and northeast. Next 5 to 7 days, the bigger rainfall totals. And again, some of that will be perhaps with the first named tropical system, short-lived. I don't even think it's going to last 24 hours, but we'll get our first named system somewhere in the western Gulf, I think, in the next 12 hours or so. 4 to 8 inches down there. The showers and thunderstorms become more active, as we talked about, across the Midwest, and intensify as we head through the middle part of the week, with at least an inch or two in some pockets of 3-inch totals over the Midwest corn and bean complex, the Midwestern areas. And heat will continue to be focused for now, and no sign of it coming east anytime soon in the western part of the country and as far east as maybe cattle and livestock country in New Mexico, Oklahoma, Panhandle, West Texas. Cotton. The next 5 to 7 days, that's the next 7 days actually, you can see easily targeted 3-4 inches of rain, eastern Iowa, northern and central Illinois, much of Indiana, parts of Missouri, 1 to 3, and the 4 to 8 inch corridor down the I-10 and I-20 corridor. So basically everyone east of the Black Hills and really east of the Missouri will have a opportunity to dump the rain gauge out on a multi-day, multi-inch go of it here in the coming days. The next 6 to 10 days, again, it's basically a weak reach in the west, trough downstream. The wind, at least the fronts get absorbed in the middle part of that current from west to east, so they don't move north much, they don't move south much. Disturbance come along it, and that's a great way to make rainfall. This is not a great forecast if you're trying to grow corn and soybean fields. This is probably extended well into the first week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks of July. Cool weather, comfortable. Not a great way to accumulate growing degree day units. And along and west of the divide is where the heat and down through Florida and the Keys area, hot weather. And the general right idea of a wet weather pattern, this is probably suppressed a little too far south, that darker green area, but the general right idea, it is a wet pattern for many areas and largely focused over the central plains and the Corn Belt areas. There's little change, maybe a little strengthening of the ridge to the west. And the trough is still a little deeper for the time of year for the Great Lakes region and along the Appalachian Trail. So the cool air stays locked in. It's tough to get big pattern shifts going on in the summertime. And again, this is very much not completely dominated by, but it is a impact of this moderate and strengthening El Nino. There are other indices in the North Atlantic, the stratosphere, and the Northern Pacific that are taking into account and accentuating this. So it's not strictly all El Nino, just a perfect storm, if you will, of long-range indices lining on up. And the general right idea, again, a little too far south in some of that rain area. I think it's really targeted for northern and eastern Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana going forward into the waning days of the month of June. Live stream is on Tuesday, the 23rd. Next Tuesday, we'll update things the rest of summertime. Additional comments on this moderate and quickly moving to strong El Nino setup. A lot of the stuff you're going to hear out there is what's based on an El Nino in a colder season, the colder El Nino, which is a warmer and drier setup. But this is summertime, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about how that impacts summertime. But we think we got a pretty good leg on what's going on. If you can make it through all those issues, too much rain, not enough growing degree day units, there is heat and there's dry time, and maybe the return of maybe slightly droughtish conditions into parts of the Corn Belt, parts of the plains going forward. We're going to have to wait till later July, August, September, maybe to get that going. If we can avoid the cold, then it looks promising. But there's a lot of stuff right now stacked up the way I see it. And I'm finally hearing stuff on other outlets that maybe things aren't as good as they are, and lack of root development and hay's a problem and blah, blah, blah. I think we'll get more and more of that going forward as folks really start to realize and report on what's going on out there instead of kind of putting everything in a nice middle, everything is fine box. So that's the story from here in the weather office, and we'll update things on Tuesday. Hopefully everyone can join us, and we'll get you the straight and narrow here going forward here for the rest of the summertime season.
Exactly. Put that on your calendar. Next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Greg will be with us live to give us an update and hopefully some some insight into what's going to happen here in the summer and going into fall, I guess, right? Is that kind of the time period we're looking at here, Greg?
Yeah. It'll keep us. I think it's going to keep everyone on their toes. And again, it gets better, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But it's mid and late summertime, and it's a winding down. We think of the weather pattern and a better warming trend. It may be hard pressed to get more significant rains going after that as we kind of transition out of summer and into early autumn, when the more typical trademarks of a strong El Nino get going, again approaching the cooler season. We don't get many of these in summertime. They tend to be weaker. When they're weaker, they're tough to identify. You don't get much of a change in sensible weather. And I keep hearing everyone talking about a winter context El Nino, warmer and drier across the Midwest and the upper Midwest. But no, it's a reverse setup, cooler and wetter for now. We'll transition things, I think, better, but we've got to get into July and more so August. So that's the conundrum going forward.
Very good. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in as well.